Hey guys, quick note to some of the real researchers that watch my channel. This story right here had over 100,000 versions, baby. I kid you not. So of course, I took my story by taking little bits and pieces from everything that I saw. But I'm going to leave links to some of the stuff I saw in the description box in case you guys want to do your own research. But it's not everything, y'all. It's just too much. But I did leave links in case you guys wanted to go research this story. So anyways, let's get to it. Okay, so she's not Hollywood. But boy, oh boy, this is a heck of a story that murder history never told us about. Gonna blow your hair back and your socks off. This is Ashley with Ashley Says So. I am back with another old Hollywood scandal hit piece. And before we get started, want to tell you don't forget about the merch at ashleysaysso.net. And if you want to send gifts to the channel, the Amazon wish list is in the description. Now let's go ahead and get to the disclaimer so we can get to this scandalous story. Let's get to it. I'm not sure what's true or false in this video. I take gossip and tea and scandal from online, from books, from magazine, from word of mouth, and I ball it all up and I tell you guys a story. The whole video is for entertainment purposes. I have done my research. Make sure you do yours. Now, let's get to the video. Ruby Jackson was born on August 31st, 1909 in Zuber, Florida. Her mother's name was Gertrude and her father's name was William Jackson. And along with Ruby, the Jacksons had 5 other children. But out of all of the children that the Jacksons did have, Ruby stood out. Honey, her intelligence was out of this world, and also she was determined to have money. And it wasn't that her parents were destitute or just showed enough broke. I mean, they did okay, but okay was not enough for Ruby. Ruby dreamed of a life of riches and glamour. And since Ruby was so blessed with this outgoing flair, and since, like I mentioned before, she was very smart, her parents ended up sending her to a private school. She took several courses as she looked forward to being a nurse, but it was bookkeeping that she actually excelled in. And being so lively and so smart also brought the boys Ruby's way. She was quoted later as saying that she knew she looked good from an early age. She said the boys would tell her so. She also said that the boys would be delighted by her personality. Basically, she had this quality of being a female who knew how to make the guys comfortable. And so, of course, this kept all the guys barking up her leg. Now, nobody knows if Ruby kept herself for marriage, but what she did hold out on was getting married. Allegedly, many boys wanted to be her husband, but Ruby wanted to hold out for the right man. Ruby was not about to marry no boy who just had the looks and nothing else, or who just had the jokes, haha, and nothing else. She was waiting for a man that could help her achieve her dreams of wealth. And she found that in a young, handsome man by the name of Sam Mccollum. Now, Ruby met Sam in or around 1929 or 1930, and while they were dating, Ruby paid attention to Sam's talk about the future. She listened intently as he raved about the big shot life he was going to have. She absolutely loved it when Sam would get this very serious look in his eyes and say something like, "I'm gonna have all the riches in the land, no matter what I gotta do to get it." So even though Sam Mccollum was considered poor when he and Ruby met, she trusted that he would end up getting her the life that she deserved. And so when Sam asked for her hand in marriage, Ruby said yes, and they got married in the year of 1931. No sooner than the marriage papers were signed, Ruby got pregnant with her first child, a boy by the name of Sam Jr. And since they were now parents, the pressure was on Sam to go ahead and make those dreams that he had been talking about come true. He worked any and everywhere he could in their local town of Zuber. And although he did make money, this was not the money that he promised his wife or himself. So he ends up talking his wife Ruby into moving to New York. It was there that he felt their fortunes lie. Well, Sam's feelings and thoughts tricked him, honey, because he did not find any fortune in New York. But what he did find was the underworld. And more than that, he found the underworld's bosses. Black bosses in particular. Black men who were the masters of their own universe. Fancy suits, shiny shoes, big cars, all the glamorous ladies, big houses. Nobody was telling these black men what's what, and Sam loved what he saw. It didn't take him long to study the workings of what made these men their wealth And those workings ended up being the numbers business. So after about maybe 5 years of living in New York, Sam had gained all of the knowledge that he needed, and he packed his wife and children. By this point, they had children. So he packed his wife and children up, and they were moving back down to Florida because Sam was now aware that there were several numbers businesses down in Florida, but these were called bolita rings. And so what he done was search for a community down in Florida that was going to be good for his children, for his family, but that also did not have its own bolita ring, because he was going to open his own bolita ring in that community. And the community that he found and settled on was a community called Live Oak. As soon as the family settles in, Sam puts his bolita or numbers running knowledge to work. And in a very short period of time, it is the most profitable underworld business around. And Sam had a great business acumen and business model, honey. Basically, anybody that he felt might kick up a fuss for his underworld activity, Sam would put them on the payroll, no questions asked. He felt that it was better to share his cut than to have the whole operation go bust, no matter who it was. And it wasn't long before one of these people on his payroll was a Dr. Clinton Leroy Adams. And Dr. Adams was alleged to be one of the most, if not the most, prominent men in town. He also became the family physician for Sam's whole family. And we're about to have a lot more to say about Dr. Adams, but for right now, let's get back to Ruby. So Ruby is just tickled to death, honey. To say that she chose wisely would definitely be an understatement. Her husband, a man that she is deeply in love with, put her in a 9-bedroom mansion. She got a new Cadillac every single year. And she wouldn't dream of leaving the house without a fur, a tailored dress, and a Chanel handbag, or a Gucci handbag, or a Hermes handbag, whatever designer she chose to wear that day. Her children were all very well taken care of. She had servants about and around her house. Sometimes she would take their servants along if she ever wanted to go and lounge at one of their many rental properties. She is living an absolute dream life that many women and men would kill for back then and today. And her life would have stayed dreamy if things hadn't gone sour with her husband, Sam. Now, since Sam and Ruby had been married, they'd always appeared very much in love. When he did his big one by getting into the life of criminal enterprises, once Ruby found out she was right there with him, actually, she used her immaculate bookkeeping skills to ensure that the money was going everywhere it was supposed to. Even when Sam added on several illegal juke joints, Ruby kept the books for those. She took pride in being a good wife for her husband, giving him all of her time, all of her energy. So like I said, Ruby adored her husband and Sam adored his wife, until suddenly he didn't. And this change happened around the mid-1940s. Sam began to grow very distant and very cold. Instead of looking at her with love and warmth, he would look at her with contempt or disdain. The kind words he used to chat her down with now became barking orders. He just seemed to not really like his wife anymore. But in spite of this cruel treatment, Ruby found herself trying to bring her husband back around. But unfortunately for her, nothing worked. And seeing her marriage kind of crumble all around her put Ruby in a mental downfall. She started to suffer with anxiety and depression. And for these issues, she needed to go see the local doctor, who was Dr. Leroy Adams. So Ruby did start to go see Dr. Adams for her depression and nervousness. And each time he would give her a shot and she would leave feeling much better than she had before. However, after being treated for anxiety, depression, nervousness, things like that, other issues started to suddenly pop up. Now Ruby was going to the doctor for stomach pain, or for shoulder pain, or knee pain, etc. and etc. Really, any issue or pain that she could think up in her head, Ruby would go to the doctor for. And soon it became pretty clear that Ruby was making up issues to get to the doctor's office at least once or twice a month. It was also found that although Dr. Adams would give Ruby a shot to clear up any issue that she had, her visits were truly about her being able to complain to the doctor about how Sam was treating her. "Oh, Dr. Adams, I just don't know what I'm gonna do. Sam has just grown so distant, he's so cold." And although she was using Dr. Adams as a soundboard, eventually Dr. Adams started to reply with things like, there now, Ruby. Now you're a great girl. And if Sam doesn't recognize that, well, surely somebody else will. I mean, I'd love to have a woman sweet as pie like you. Psh, please, I treat you like a queen. And if you're wondering, yes, these talks were absolutely too familiar. Not only for Ruby, who was a married woman, Dr. Adams was a married man. Anyway, after they'd have their talks, like I said before, Dr. Adams would give Ruby a shot, she'd feel better, and then she'd leave. But if she didn't have a real pain or a real injury, why was she getting shots? More than that, what kind of shots were the doctor giving her? Well, gossip claims that although Dr. Adams never told Ruby what he was giving her, it is alleged that he was giving her some form of cocaine. And that's why Ruby felt so much better after every shot. That's also another reason why Ruby was so drawn to getting to the doctor's office any chance she could. Of course, she didn't know that this was also influencing her decision, since she never really had a real injury to heal. The shot was just kind of like a secondhand thought in her mind. Well, to move on with the story, although townspeople are starting to notice that Ruby goes to the doctor's office constantly, nobody really suspects anything. For one, she's married to the wealthiest black man in town. For two, Dr. Adams is white and he's also married. And for three, Dr. Adams is good people. He's basically the white man in town that is cool with all the black folks. More than that, he's cool with all of the poor folks, and that's on the white side and the black side. But allegedly, he has a strong bond or strong relationship with the black resident. He sees black patients for free, always got a hug and a smile for black people, always know the black slang. He's basically, he's invited to the cookout. Well, here's the tee-hee-hee. In reality, allegedly, some people, mostly middle-class white people, knew Dr. Adams on an intimate level, would come out later on to say that the doctor was not cool like that at all. They alleged that this Dr. Adams would run over animals, that he'd had a history of using and abusing people, and that he hated soft-hearted men with a passion. But it was a very small group of people who knew or who thought this about Dr. Adams. He was able to hide this other persona under his big, huge smile. In fact, he hid it so well that by the time of his death, he was the front runner to get the Senate seat for Florida. So anyways, that's a little bit of background on this Dr. Adams. Now let's move on. So the year is now 1948. Ruby, who used to be an outgoing woman, visiting family, friends, going shopping, now she spends most of her time at home and depressed. All she wants is her husband's loving and her husband's attention. So Ruby is on this sad and dreary emotional roller coaster when one day she gets news that punches her dead in her gut. Sam, her husband, has taken up with a high yellow, slender mulatto girl. And yes, I'm using the terminology from back then. Because Sam was out doing whatever with his lover, her Zora Neale Hurston, Ruby started to think wickedly. And what did I just say on my live stream 2 nights ago? Women usually don't cheat. What women do is cheat back. And per Zora Neale Hurston, Ruby Mccollum took the mind frame of, if Sam wants to cheat on me with a half-white girl, I'll show him something by cheating on him with a full white man. And allegedly, or per Zora, Ruby sat at home one day and she sent her children over to a family member's house. Sam was already gone doing his thing, of course. And Ruby picked up the phone and she called Dr. Adams over. Said Dr. Adams knocked on the door. Ruby opened it wearing only a robe. She told Dr. Adams that her stomach had been paining her. And baby, Dr. Adams rushed her up them stairs so fast, baby, he practically knocked her over trying to get her to lay down on her bed so he can examine her. The folks say Ruby let that robe fall open, and Dr. Adams got to feeling around on her lower stomach. And then he got to feeling around and poking into places he didn't need to be poking, like her inner thigh. When he noticed that Ruby didn't protest to that, he slid that hand a little further over. And when he pulled that hand back and it looked like it had been under a waterfall, Dr. Adams jumped in that thing so quick, Ruby was sitting up there shocked in the face, honey, not really believing that she is laying there and this white man is on top of her. But whether she believed it or not, there she was. And rumor has it, or per Zora, when they were done, Ruby did feel a little shame, but then her husband Sam flooded her thoughts and the shame left. because now she figured they were even. She also started thinking that this whole thing really wasn't so bad. It's not like she chose some random redneck white man. No, she chose one of the most prominent white men in the town, and he chose her too. So it was what it was. So Ruby is lost in these type of thoughts. She can't help but feel a giddiness rising up in her because she got her payback. And she's kind of just sitting there quietly and kind of smiling to herself until Dr. Adams says, "Woo-wee, Ruby gal, you sure are something. I'll be back another day soon. You just make sure you keep that there ready for me when I come back." This right here wakes Ruby straight up because, sir, what? Like, what the heck is going on? I mean, this whole thing was cool when it was Ruby's idea and she controlled what happened. But now this man is standing up here saying that he'll be back. And I mean, this ain't no question. This is a statement. He'll be back another day. He said these words like they were a fact. Like, sir, how do you even know that I didn't want this to be a one-time thing? And actually, when Ruby first started off with this so-called affair, she probably didn't want it to be a one-time thing because she probably wanted to continually get back at Sam every time he cheated on her. But now, after Dr. Adams was saying this, Ruby sure enough definitely wanted this to just be a one-time thing. And so Ruby, hearing this man so bluntly and adamantly talk about coming back on his time to get more of her stuff, tries to quickly think of something to say that might deter him. And she quickly blabbers out, what if somebody sees you? What if somebody finds out? You can't come here again. To which Dr. Adams said, well, quite frankly, Ruby, I don't give a damn who finds out about it. Nobody gonna do nothing to me. And when I say nobody, I mean nobody. And it's the way he looked Ruby straight into her eyes that let her know that that last nobody was meant for her husband, Sam. Oh my, what had Ruby done? She felt so good, so powerful, so sneaky when she invited Dr. Adams over. But now when he was leaving, she felt so scared, so lonely, and so victimized. And unfortunately for Ruby, this turned out to be not just a passing feeling, because very soon that is exactly what she would become. Baby, Dr. Adams became absolutely uncontrollable. This man started coming to Ruby's house at least once a week to get the goodies. And if there ever was a time that Sam did end up being at home, Dr. Adams would call Ruby demanding that she come up to his doctor's office right this instant so he can get some of the good. He became so possessive and so entitled that if Ruby acted like she couldn't get away from the house because she was home alone with the kids, this man would allegedly come to her house and in her house and tell her children, all right, children, y'all going out to play now. I need to have some time to talk to your mama. And march Ruby and her blown back hair right on up the stairs to get what he wanted. And Ruby, who never really had much control in this situation at all, really lost all control though, very early on with this arrangement. Gossip claims about 6 months to a year after this nonsense started, Ruby told Dr. Adams that she was sorry that she led him on that first time, but that she loved her husband. That's who she wanted to be with, and she just could not continue cheating on her husband this way. Baby, allegedly, Dr. Adams said something to the effect of, you gonna keep those legs open. If you don't, I'm gonna give you a shot in your arm and give you something that you'll never wake up from. Or he would threaten to ruin her husband's business and their family name. Ruby became so desperate to get away from Dr. Adams that at least 2 or 3 times she pretended to have severe nervous breakdowns just to be admitted into the hospital or a psych ward for a long-term stay. But unfortunately for Ruby, none of those stays lasted more than 12 days. Ruby was at a complete loss of what to do. And now she was truly depressed because essentially she was being sexually assaulted and there was nothing that she could do about it. And I think the only thing that was her saving grace at first was the fact that her husband Sam didn't know what was going on because he was rarely at home. But I think by late 1949, Sam does find out what's going on. Well, allegedly, when Sam found out about Ruby and Dr. Adams, he was absolutely angry. It's even alleged by some people that he put the hands on Ruby. And of course, as you listen to this, it's really kind of ironic that Sam is heartbroken and wanting to fight somebody. That's exactly the way Ruby felt when she found out he was messing with that mixed race girl. So it was just a mess. And if she thought her husband Sam was distant and cold before, oh baby, he was like ice now. And this broke Ruby's heart. She was desperate to try to find a way to end this thing with Dr. Adams. She didn't want him, she wanted her husband. But by this time, Dr. Adams looked at Ruby like she was pretty much his woman. And anytime she denied him some of her good stuff or threatened to cut him off in any way, he also would put the hands on her and beat her up. He made it clear that she was his to do whatever he wanted to do to her, and she better get used to it. And then in 1951, Ruby ended up pregnant. And she knew in her heart that it was Dr. Adams's baby, so she wanted to abort it. And gossip claims that she also possibly looked at this moment like, yes, finally, here is something that will break it all up. Here's something that will stop this mess. And she felt this way because she was kind of sure that Dr. Adams would definitely not want a mixed race child running around here with the whole community pretty much knowing that it was by him. As bold and brave as he was, surely he didn't want to mess up his whole reputation with a baby by a black woman. So since Ruby felt like the news of her pregnancy would kind of scare Dr. Adams, she ended up going to his office and telling him that she was indeed pregnant with his child, but she was going to go ahead and get an abortion, and this really meant that they needed to stop. Because even though she was going to get rid of this child, who's to say when she might get pregnant again? And next time she probably won't be able to get an abortion. And she continues to explain that a baby would be the ruination of her and him. And of course he wouldn't want his reputation and his medical practice being threatened by something like that. Well, Ruby could have died. And I mean, she could have actually died for real. When Dr. Adams allegedly ended up telling her, if you abort my baby, I'm gonna kill you and your whole family. You ain't aborting nothing. You're gonna have my baby, and you're gonna raise my baby along with your other children, and you're gonna love my baby just like you love your other children. And the folks say that he was not playing a little bit, and Ruby didn't believe he was playing. As a matter of fact, she was so scared that she carried that baby to full term and gave birth to the baby, a daughter by the name of Loretta. When Sam, who I guess had been still having some sort of small sexual contact with Ruby, saw baby Loretta when she was born, he went wild. He could not believe that his wife had actually had a baby for this doctor. Allegedly, he put the hands on Ruby again, and their marriage was really just in tatters. What made it worse, once baby Loretta was born, Dr. Adams felt so much claim and entitlement to Ruby that baby, he would start coming by the house even if Sam was at home. Chaw, them folks say that man would come by the house and allegedly ask to see Ruby and his baby Loretta upstairs. Now listen, I really hope that this part was exaggerated, but I'm telling you what was written in the book. What I do know is that allegedly, as soon as Dr. Adams got to the house, Sam would jump in his car and he would leave. And if that part is true, it was clear that Dr. Adams was getting some type of joy from humiliating Sam. And it actually really lines up with what that small group of people said about Dr. Adams, about how he hated soft-hearted, or what he called yellow-bellied coward men. Think about it. In some sort of twisted way, Dr. Adams hated Sam for the fact that Sam hadn't put a bullet through his head yet. The fact that he was sleeping with this man's wife, possibly showing up at this man's house when this man was there and asking to see his wife alone. And this man, Sam, hadn't done anything about it really. Clearly, Dr. Adams got off on this. And I'm also absolutely certain that he also got off on the fact of sleeping with this wealthy black man's wife, especially since it said that Ruby and her husband had more money than even Dr. Adams. They certainly had a nicer house than Dr. Adams and his wife. So, come on, Dr. Adams had to feel like, yes, since I can't compare to Sam Mccollum when it comes to wealth, I'm letting him know that no matter how wealthy his black behind gets, my white behind is still one-upping him by sleeping with his wife, and he won't or can't do a doggone thing about it. Child, Then the folks say that not only was Dr. Adams doing all of this stuff to Ruby, this man right here who used to work with Dr. Adams when he was a young man at the hospital said that he would see Dr. Adams come up behind black women and kind of pat them on the butt and be like, when you gonna let me get a taste of that, sister? When you gonna let me come over to your house? So he clearly was throwing his weight around, and these women, just like Ruby, most likely couldn't refuse him. So there's no telling how many other women he was doing this to. It pretty much boiled down to a white man having free reign to do whatever he wanted to do with a black woman, whether she was married or single. So to move along, 1951, the whole year was a very desperate year for Ruby. Like I said, her mixed race daughter Loretta was born. Her husband Sam allegedly had washed his hands of her. Dr. Adams was still trying to get whatever he could get whenever he could. And what made it the most desperate year of all is that Dr. Adams was going out for the Senate seat for Florida. And allegedly, he'd already threatened Ruby plenty of times before that if she didn't do what he wanted, he would ruin her by messing up her husband's business. And so in Ruby's mind, if this man won a seat in the Senate, he would pretty much be all powerful. She would be not only at his beck and call, but at his whim. Her life, her husband's life, their finances, her children's lives, their homes, their cars, everything would basically be in the palm of this man's hand. If he wanted to mess everything up as a senator, at the snap of his finger. And allegedly, also around this time, the town ended up getting a new sheriff. And the folks say that this sheriff wasn't interested in no kickbacks or paybacks from the underworld. In fact, this sheriff was by the book, and he was actively working to bring down any criminal enterprise. So it was just a lot. It was just a whole lot. Ruby was under immense pressure. She was really dying inside. And then soon after this, the folks say that an episode happened that kind of just turned Ruby's mind off. And y'all, I really hope I have the date of this event right, but if I don't, please forgive me. But I think it was either in June or July of 1952 when Ruby found out that she was around 3 months pregnant with her 5th child. The story I saw didn't specify if it was Dr. Adams' baby or her husband Sam's baby. Well, on the day that I'm talking about, Ruby is at home and her husband Sam comes home. And I don't think anybody knows the full story, but some people assume that since her husband is home on this day, Ruby wants to try to take the time to talk to him. Try to take some kind of time to repair the relationship. Well, anyways, if we listen to people's assumption, Sam is not interested in any of this. As a matter of fact, he doesn't even really want to talk to Ruby. The only reason he's even home is because he wants to throw a party for his underworld business associate. Well, sometime during this party, one of Sam's underworld friends end up getting very drunk, and he ends up vomiting on the carpet. It was either after everybody was gone, or if there were still people there, it was only a little few people. Sam starts demanding that Ruby get down and clean up the stuff on the carpet. Allegedly, he's just being unnecessarily mean to her, unnecessarily cruel to her. So the folks say that Ruby said, Sam, no, I'm not going to get down and clean that carpet. Sam keeps demanding that Ruby clean the carpet, and Ruby keeps saying no. And then Sam gets irate and uncontrollable, and he lashes out and he jumps on Ruby once again. This time he beats her to a pulp. But even though the beating was brutal and Ruby came out, I'm sure, with bruises all over her body, it was more of her mind that was said to be messed up after this episode. She became very despondent, and from here on out, Ruby would just kind of spend her days going through the motions of being a mother and a housewife. She rarely talked to the servants anymore. She had already stopped going to visit friends and family, but now she rarely talked to them on the phone. She just was shut in, despondent and depressed until August the 3rd. This day started out with Ruby going through the motions, but then suddenly she did something that really wasn't so routine anymore. And that was when she got dressed in some of her fine day clothes and then packed all of her daughters up and put them in the back of the car. And then she went driving downtown to Dr. Adams' office. Witnesses say that when she pulled up, she looked back and told her daughters to stay put and she would be right back. And she got out of the car and she went up to the front door of the doctor's office. But instead of going in, she kind of just paced back and forth, all the while looking into the window to see who was in the waiting room. Nobody truly knows what Ruby was thinking, but what most people suspect is that she was kind of hanging around waiting for the waiting room to be empty before she went into the office. However, she must have gotten impatient because by the time she walked into the doctor's office, there were still two black ladies sitting in the waiting room waiting to see the doctor. Well, per the story, Ruby walks up to the front desk and Dr. Adams is at the front desk. And she tells him, hey, I'm here to pay on my bill. And she hands him a $100 bill. Well, according to Ruby herself, Dr. Adams says something like, come on to the back, we'll handle it back there. And allegedly, she told him, no, I'm not doing none of that. I'm just here to pay my bill. Here's the money. Dr. Adams gets upset that Ruby won't go to the back with him. So he snatches the $100 bill out of her hand and he tells her, this is not enough money. The bills you guys owe are way more than $100. And Ruby is like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. My amount is much smaller than $100. And Dr. Adams tells her, well, it's not about your amount. I sent your husband a bill for something that only he knows about, and his bill totals way more than $100. So Ruby is like, okay, well, that's between you and my husband. I only have $100 and I'm trying to cover my bill. And Dr. Adams says, nope. As a matter of fact, every bill y'all got needs to be paid up front right now. And so Ruby asks him, you know what, since you're saying I owe this much, show me the books. Show me the books right now so I can see why we owe this much money. Dr. Adams says, well, I don't have my books balanced right now. You'll have to come back another day to see that. But before you leave, you're going to pay me what's owed. And as he's talking, he starts to walk away. And while his back is turned, he says, yeah, you're going to pay me what's owed because if not, I'm going to end up going to the law on y'all. I'm going to get what's coming to me. To which Ruby says, oh yeah, you're going to get what's coming to you. She reaches down into her designer bag and she pulls out a handgun and she shoots Dr. Adams in his back 4 times. Everybody in the office and surrounding areas are either hollering or they're just stunned silent. Ruby just walks out and gets in her car and she ends up driving home. Once she gets home, she throws the gun out in the backyard. She changes out of her dress and she ends up fixing her daughter, baby Loretta, who is 10 months old at this time, a bottle. She calmly starts to feed her baby and she waits for the police to arrive at the house. When they get there, Ruby, who is still kind of acting out of her mind, tells the sheriff deputy, come on upstairs. I got your money for you up here, which was her routine when she was paying underworld kickbacks to the sheriff deputy. Well, she's doing and saying this, and the sheriff deputy is like, no, ma'am, we're going to have to take you down to the station. Why did you kill Dr. Adams? To which Ruby responds, I don't know. Well, after they get her cuffed up and they put her in the police car, they take her down to the local jail where within an hour, a lynch mob is forming. And the mob is getting so dangerous and so riled up that Ruby has to be moved to another secret location. It was so bad, actually, that when she got in the police car to be moved to the other location, one of the mob members jumped in their own car and started speeding down the street, following the police car, trying to get to Ruby. While this is happening with Ruby, her husband Sam gets the news that his wife has shot Dr. Adams dead, and so what Sam does is rushes home and he packs up all of their loose money that's in the home in their suitcase. He also gets all of their children dressed and they pile in the car and he drives back down to their hometown of Zuber, Florida, where he ends up dropping all of the children off at Ruby's mother's house, and then allegedly he goes to a friend or a cousin's house. When he gets to that cousin or friend's house, they say he hid the suitcase of money somewhere, and then he goes into the house and he ends up going to sleep for the night. By the next morning, Sam Mccollum is dead. Allegedly, he died from a heart attack. Of course, that death is really convenient and really suspicious. So people have said for years that actually Sam Mccollum ended up committing suicide that night. You know, allegedly he just could not deal with this pressure. And I'm sure he had some guilt as well, you know, because he's probably thinking in his mind, golly, if I never started cheating in the first place, all of this stuff wouldn't have happened. And not only that, I've lost my wife, my family, my children. Now that my wife is in jail, they're probably going to put me in jail as either an accessory to the murder, or if not that, they're going to find out about my underworld crimes and put me in jail for that. Basically, he knew his whole life was over, and all of these riches and wealth and this easy life as he knew it was about to be over. I don't know how Ruby reacted to her husband Sam's death, but I'm sure that either her heart broke into a million pieces, or either she was still kind of out of her mind and probably did not respond to it at all. To move on with the story, the trial started later on that year in 1952, and immediately they tried to paint Ruby as some sort of angry black woman who basically went into Dr. Adams' medical office and just became extremely upset that her bill was so much. I mean, this high amount of a bill was so high that it made this woman pull out a gun and shoot this doctor in the back 4 times. It made absolutely no sense, and as the trial got underway, the truths started to spill out. Ruby got on the stand and told basically how she had a forced sexual relationship with Dr. Adams. She even let the court know that her daughter Loretta was Dr. Adams' child. Speaking of babies and children, if you're wondering what happened to the baby that Ruby was pregnant with when she shot Dr. Adams, allegedly she ended up having a miscarriage of that baby while she was in jail. But to get back to the trial, even though Ruby tried to explain her side, she nor her lawyers were ever able to fully describe the full relationship that she had with Dr. Adams, you know, the full abuse and trauma that he put her through. She also wasn't allowed to do any interviews with any newspapers or magazines. Even when Zora Neale Hurston came down and tried to do an interview with her, the judge of the trial ended up blocking Zora Neale Hurston. So like I said, Ruby could never tell her full side of the story, and so because she couldn't, it basically just boiled down to her admitting that she had an affair with this white man. And a lot of the white people in the courtroom, because that's who were in there, a lot of them just could not reconcile this fact. You know, they had a hard enough time believing that Dr. Adams would sleep with this black woman. And in their mind, even if he did sleep with this black woman, it was consensual. There was no way that that stand-up righteous man who helped everybody in the community, there was no way that he actually forced this woman to be in a relationship with him. Baby, they were standing tall to protect their white brother in death, until it was revealed that their white brother had tried to kill and rob one of them. The folks say that Ruby's lawyers ended up going through all of the papers in Dr. Adams's medical office, and they ended up finding a will for a man by the name of Laverne Green, I think his name was. And Laverne Green was the owner of a busy hotel that was named Blue Lodge. Well, Ruby's lawyers are looking over this will, and not only do they see that it belongs to Laverne Green, they also see where the will says, when I die, I want all of my belongings, all of my property, my land, my hotel, everything like that, to be bequeathed to Dr. C. Leroy Adams. And Ruby's lawyers are kind of looking over this, and they just find this absolutely strange. And so they go visit Mr. Laverne Green and they ask him, hey, when you pass away, did you want to give all of your belongings over to Dr. Adams? And Laverne tells them, no, I never said anything like that. Well, baby, when they show him the will, he gets a chill up his spine. Because not only had Dr. Adams forged the will to take possession of all of Laverne Green's belongings, he had also added that he needed to take possession of Laverne Green's dead body. Laverne Green, as well as Ruby's lawyers, think that Dr. Adams had planned on killing this man, and he wanted to make sure that he had the body so no autopsy or anything else would be done. Oh yeah, baby. During Ruby's trial, it emerged that Dr. Adams was an absolute monster, a liar, a manipulator, a terrible person. Baby, they found out that Dr. Adams faked his recommendations into medical school, said he falsified information regarding tenants that lived at his farm so he can get more government funding. And then he lied at an earlier time about treating veterans medically so he could get big payouts from the government for that. His reputation was in shreds. But this was the Deep South in 19 1952. And even though everybody had seen how Dr. Adams really wasn't a good man like he portrayed, it still was a hard pill to swallow to take this black woman's words of abuse and sexual assault. So Ruby Mccollum ended up being convicted of murder and sentenced to death in December of 1952. And then her conviction would be appealed and overturned on a technicality, which is what happened in 1954. A second trial was on the books, and after this trial was over, Ruby ended up being sentenced to a long-time stay at a mental facility. Gossip claims she served a 20-year sentence at this facility, and she was a free woman in 1974. She ended up being paid $40,000 for the movie rights of her story. She also was able to get back in touch with her children. Unfortunately, though, the next year in 1975, her son, Sam Jr., ended up being convicted and sentenced to prison. And then two of her daughters, Sonia and Kay, which I really didn't mention or talk much about, they ended up passing right after the reconciliation with their mother. Kay died in a car accident in 1978, and Sonia died of a heart attack in 1979. And as far as her youngest daughter, Loretta, I think she may have been adopted by an outside family after Ruby went to prison and her biological father, Dr. Adams, was shot dead. Gossip claims that throughout the 1980s, people tried to speak with Ruby about what happened. You know, they wanted to get the full story, but allegedly the memory of everything was just so painful that she couldn't even recall it anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like, she would actually try to think back to what happened, and it was just a blank slate. You know, it was just way too traumatic. And to be honest with you, I can see why Ruby's mind would be like this. I mean, she had it all. She and her husband were possibly the wealthiest blacks in the whole county. And the mistake of an affair, and even more the mistake of underestimating an affair with a prominent white man, caused the downfall of everything in her life. And she had nobody to blame but herself. But anyways, Ruby Mccollum lived all the way to the ripe old age of 83 years old when she ended up dying on May the 23rd, 1992 of a stroke. What an absolute heck of a story, ain't it, guys? Wasn't that something else? Yeah, I already know. Go ahead and leave it in the comments and let me know your thoughts, y'all. If you like this video, you like the storytelling, you like the story, go ahead and like the video. Also, if you are new here, go ahead and subscribe, guys. I love you guys. I will be back with another video soon. Bye.